Well, welcome everyone. It looks like we've got 36 people right now, and we had 100 people sign up for today. We did cap it at 100 because we wanted to allow for as much participation with our panelists as possible. So good morning and welcome to the funders, our virtual funders roundtable, our first virtual one. My name's Lucinda Christian-Steiner, and I'm the director at the Center for Social Change. My contact information is there. And if you're not familiar with the center is a hub for change makers, and we are located in Miami, Florida. And we promote growth, collaboration, and wellness through shared resources such as work and event space, which hopefully we can use again someday, real soon. We also provide back office support services, networking, and professional development opportunities for our members and the broader community. While we are closed during this time, we have moved many of our capacity building and wellness programs online. Some of our programs are for members only, but others, like today's roundtable, are available to all no matter where you might be. We offer various levels of membership and also provide fiscal sponsorship to projects that don't have 501c3 status. So whether you're in Miami, Minneapolis, or Montana, because we had to come up with 3 words that had an M in them, the Center for Social Change can help your organization grow and connect with other like-minded groups. So for today's event, sorry, I jumped too fast. Let me go back. So here's information about the center and how you can connect with us and follow us. And I've got Lupe's information on there. Lupe's on the call today. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about our programs or services or membership. So for today's program, I say we're excited, but I know the circumstances aren't great as to what, originally we wanted to provide this for other reasons. So circumstances have changed where this has become a little more critical and necessary. So a year ago, we started hosting funder roundtables, and they were quite successful as an opportunity to interact with foundations in Miami who you may not usually be able to interact with or be able to communicate with. So today's roundtable, unfortunately, is under quite different circumstances that we weren't necessarily hoping for, but we had a huge interest in today's roundtable. So we did cap it at 100 so we could provide some level of interaction with the panelists, and certainly all 100 may not show up. We are pleased to have Lorinda Gonzalez, who is a member with the center and director of grants with Grants Inc. And she will be moderating the conversation with our panelists. I'm going to ask that everyone keeps yourself on mute during the panel discussion, and then we will have Q&A and an opportunity to ask questions towards the end. And at that time, you can use the chat box to pose your question. There's also, if you're familiar with Zoom, in the participants feature, there is a raise hand feature. You can also use that when we get to that time. So in the meantime, if you don't mind just minimizing the group chat, yes, Lupe is awesome. We totally agree. I'm looking at it now in the chat. We do have an awesome staff all the way around. So we may not get to everyone's questions. We'll do our best to field the questions and get to as many as we can. And then maybe we can collect the questions we don't get to and present them to the presenters over email afterwards. And if they have a chance to maybe respond, that would be super helpful. We can distribute that. Today, I do want to, Val, can you also verify that we're being recorded? Making sure that I meant to check that.
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect. So it will be recorded, and we'll be sure to post that afterwards and the transcript as well. So on that note, hit it too fast. I'll just go to the slide. So here's our presenters for today, our awesome panelists who have been really amazing and generous with their time. Really over the past year, we reach out to them frequently and ask them to contribute to our program. So thank you again for I don't know if Melissa has joined or not quite yet, but today we have Fernanda Kucharian with the Health Foundation of South Florida, Lindsay Linzer, who probably many of you know, with the Miami Foundation, and if Melissa has joined us, Alvarez with the Perez Foundation. So I'm going to put myself on mute. I'm going to hand it over and stop sharing the screen and hand it over to Lorinda.
Great. Thank you so much, Lucinda. And thanks for everybody for being here today. I'm super excited to have this opportunity to just have an open conversation and see where everybody's at. So we'll get started. I'm going to start with Lindsay and just ask a couple of questions. Lindsay, it's so good to see you.
Good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming as always. So just to start, tell us, how are you doing? How's the foundation doing, especially considering everything that's going on with COVID-19?
Thanks for asking. So we're surviving just like anyone else. I don't know if anyone can really say they're doing well or great right now, but we're surviving, and the foundation is in a good position financially and staff-wise. We have not had to lay off any staff. In fact, for open positions, we're still continuing to hire for. And the way we think about both about our grant making and how we determine how much we're going to grant out each year, it's based on a 12-quarter rolling average. So we're not as affected by short-term dips in the market. So in terms of the values of our funds, we have a little bit more stability. So when we anticipate kind of future grant making for the upcoming year, we anticipate being able to grant out at the same level. There's no programs that we're not doing. And I'd say really the only change we're doing as we think about how to work with our grantees is trying to be more flexible. So especially grants that are awarded this year, we are open to considering grants for project-based work or general operating support, and that's being done on a case-by-case basis in conversations with grantees.
Awesome. Awesome. Excellent. I'm glad to hear you're doing well and operations are still moving forward. Like you mentioned, it's a time that we kind of all have to adapt. So it's great to hear you guys are on top of it. So now I'll talk to Fernanda. How are you doing, Fernanda, personally and with the foundation? How are things going?
Hi, good morning, everybody, and thank you also to the Center for the opportunity to be here with you this morning. I think adaptability is the word of the day. I think we're taking everything a day at a time. The situation is ever evolving, but I think the foundation has done a really good job to adapt and adapt quickly. We have been very emphasizing transparency and humility and the power of listening with all our active grantees, as well as other partners in the community. We have been working with other funders, including the Miami Foundation, to better be able to respond and do it in a coordinated way. We have been using the power of communication and reaching out to our elected officials and really taking on a thought leadership position with especially right now with the reopening. So I think overall we have been doing the best that we can. We know that we are sometimes limited with our resources, but we're trying to make the most impact that we can and in a timely manner.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's amazing. I think that's really, like you mentioned, that's the big thing now is collaboration and communication. And like you said, listening and just hearing out what people's needs are and how we can kind of all serve together and work together. So I think that's super amazing. Is Belissa here? I don't think so. No, I don't see her here. So I'll go back to Lindsay. So Lindsay, you mentioned, so right now you guys are not working in the offices, correct?
Correct. We have been home since March 13th, so just over two months now, but it's actually been a pretty seamless transition, which has been nice. We actually had done a pretty big laptop purchase right before this crisis hit because we were trying to upgrade our technology. So a lot more staff than before actually had work-issued laptops that they were able to get home. And the foundation's been really flexible in terms of ensuring that we have the equipment that we need to do our work, whether it be an extra keyboard or screen or a mouse, whatever it is that we need to kind of make our work from home situation easier. The foundation has been really, really understanding. And as I was mentioning to you earlier before we jumped on the call, we really haven't missed a beat in terms of running our grant programs, processing payments to grantees, receiving checks, and depositing them into our charitable funds. All of our payments right now are being made via ACH, and that hasn't turned out to be a problem for any organization. So really, we're working kind of at normal volumes, and it feels in some ways like we've been doing this forever. It feels too natural now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to kind of go back to the regular workspace, right? Now that we're all kind of accustomed to working from the home space.
I don't know if regular is ever going to happen again. I think it's going to be a time of shift for organizations thinking about being more flexible with their teams, but that's all still to be seen.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I think it's great that you're able to kind of still move forward. I think it kind of just shows how awesome technology is in general, and that we're able to, use technology as that bridge, right? To bridge that gap and kind of keep moving forward. So I think it just, shows how amazing it is. Right. And Fernanda, how about you? How about you?
So we had an interesting experience because we never really worked remotely. We never, so much of foundation and funder and grantee relations is in person, and it's all about that relationship. So although we were able to transition very seamlessly, we also started working from home on March 13th. We also have not skipped a beat. We really made sure to not, delay any payments to our grantees, especially around this time. We have done everything to proactively reach out to our grantees and make sure that they know that they're being supported at this time. Asking them what their needs are and understanding that the needs are evolving on a daily basis. I think what's been really interesting is having, the high level meetings with our board virtually for the first time when you're dealing with 13 board members and a lot of documents that you have to share, but we've been able to do it. So I think that when I think about going back to, with the reopening, there really is no going back to, because the back no longer exists.
Right.
I think we're going to be charting a new reality, and there's going to be, there's no going back because that doesn't exist anymore. So it's going to be really interesting to see what aspects of this experience can we continue with, because it won't make sense to go back to the old ways of doing business.
Right. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, we have a whole new reality. I think in every industry and every organization, it's just a new reality that we're going to have to move forward with. So it makes a lot of sense. So Lindsay, I'm going to go back to you for a second. What are some of the needs? Because I know that, like with me, for example, I've networked with a lot of different organizations over these past couple of months, and they all have a lot of questions, and they're all having unique experiences and how this is affecting their operations or affecting, how they're running programs. What are some of the changes that you've seen, or some of the experiences that you've seen with nonprofits going through?
There's so much, but let's just be clear. Like every nonprofit, whether they had an operating reserve, whether they got their PPP loan, every organization is hurting right now. Their business models have changed. The way they're able to service clients and constituents and connect with their audiences has changed, and they're working to readjust. And in the past 2 months, we've had conversations with thousands of nonprofit leaders, collected information via surveys just to kind of understand financially, how is this impacting them, staff-wise, how is this impacting them. Many organizations, especially in the arts and sector space, have had to lay off staff because, the theaters are shuttered. No, they're not, museums aren't serving people right now. And unfortunately, our organizations are not in a position to just continually be able to pay staff when they don't have any earned income coming in, and it's been 2 months now. So organizations are really hurting, and it's hard for us as a foundation. Like these conversations that we have are heartbreaking. Listening to them talk about the financial situation that they're in, and not having funds to be able to support that. And I wish we had the money to be able to say to every organization that comes and tells us about what they're facing right now, like, oh, I wish we could say we had the funds to support them and provide general operating grants to every organization, but that's unfortunately not the case. And so we're trying to figure out ways to kind of get a sense of what's happening across the sector, so that as we begin to make investments in thinking about the long-term rebuilding of our sector, like, where can we have the most impact in a way that will affect multiple organizations? So trying not to look at it as an organization by organization thing, but rather like, where can we invest capital, bring partners together, and have systemic change with those investments? It's not perfect. There is so much need out there, and we just unfortunately don't have the funds. So we're also trying to figure out how we can use public policy and our voice to leverage that with politicians who are going to help be directing kind of policy at the local and state level. And as federal dollars eventually do flow to the state, how can we have a voice in how that money is coming in and how it's going to help rebuild our community?
Excellent. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, the rebuilding, because it really is rebuilding and restructuring. Because everything, like you said, everything's changed so much. It's great to see that you were saying you're doing surveys and things like that to get an idea of what people need, and to see how to move forward. And what about you, Fernanda? What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything Lindsay just said. I will add that when we did first reach out to our grantees and do surveys and the response 2 months ago is completely different than if you were to ask them again now. I think that there really is no playbook. I think it's also really heartbreaking to see how fragile really the nonprofit sector is. And what we can do, philanthropy can only go so far. Even if we get all the funders, local funders together, like we have been able to set up emergency community response funds with United Way and the Miami Foundation. I know the Miami Foundation has also done another community response fund, and we're trying to, we've repurposed our 2020 grant making budget to be able to respond to COVID. But that's a drop in the bucket compared to what's available at the federal and state level. And I think what would be really helpful is with our nonprofit partners, if we continue the dialogue to help each other out, figure out what is available, what is coming down the pipeline, so that we are not duplicating efforts and not using our resources that are very limited for something that maybe the federal government might have more funding coming down the pipeline. So I think it's really important. And it's confusing, right? Sometimes that there's not clear guidelines, I think. I mean, even with the CARES Act and the PPP loan, for those of you who are able to get that funding, I think the next hurdle is going to be make sure that that loan is forgivable. So there's going to be a whole nother set of challenges that comes with that. So I think that the more we lower down the walls and reach out to each other and have these conversations, I think the better off we all will be.
Excellent. Yep, I agree completely. And, I have some experience with the federal government from courses that I took actually last year. I mean, I've done a lot of federal grants, and it's a great thing is that there is a lot of money coming out besides like the PPP and all that. The federal government itself has, I think it's 26 agencies that fund. And I've seen some trends that are coming up of federal dollars that are going to be funneled to different states, especially, here in Dade County, that we are affected quite a bit. But the whole government funding is very confusing, and it's very complex, and it's very different than foundation funding also, because there's a disconnect between your federal grant manager and your nonprofit. There's a huge disconnect between the two, and even what they're looking for is different. So I think that's a great point, and that's something definitely that that we could start sharing, and stuff like I shared as well, like just resources and how to do this, how to look for it, and how to approach the funding. But they're definitely, I can see how that's important, because it's a crisis. It's a crisis that we're in. So I'm going to jump back to Lindsay. What are some recommendations? So I always like to try to look at things from the positive perspective as much as possible. And, it's very hard. It's kind of like somebody described it, it's like we're in a big glass of water with a hole in it, and we're just trying to, plug the hole. Like there's not an end yet to this. And like we mentioned, it's kind of, things are changing and they're always going to be different. But to try to think about some things maybe that nonprofits could do today or in the next few months that you think that could help them in their planning for the future, like what recommendations would you have at this point?
I think nonprofits, small businesses, every organization or community needs to assume that we're not going back to the way it was. And so that is going to take a reimagining of their business model. And that might be, going back, looking at their strategic plan, looking at their operational plans, and knowing that even if we do all of a sudden reopen, like this, things could happen again. This could come back where we're working from home. And so I think it's being prepared for anything, making a lot of contingency plans. I think it's just being prepared, making sure they're talking to their boards and looping in their boards on these strategic conversations and figuring out how to utilize their boards. For organizations that had kind of technology transformation goals, like now is a good time to kind of use whatever reserve funds you may have or raise dollars to kind of get you to that place so that you can be operating at full capacity no matter what the situation is. Figuring out just new ways to reach audiences, and some organizations are doing exceptionally well at that, and we know that the organizations are hurting and they're reporting their losses, but I'd say some of the best emails we get each day and the conversations we have is seeing how organizations have been able to pivot and turn and do something that they never imagined they'd do. So for example, Moonlighter Makerspace, a grantee of the foundation, turned their equipment that they normally use for kind of student training and makers to turn it into using that equipment to make face shields for frontline medical workers. So figuring out how you can use the tools you have to rethink your business it's going to be so critical right now. Be open to conversations with like organizations about how you can partner. Maybe potentially there's merger opportunities to create efficiencies, more collaboration. What I'm seeing and most inspired by is collaboration efforts with both
Yes.
within the nonprofit sector, but cross-sector collaborations. We've actually seen a lot of great examples come out during this crisis of, businesses partnering with nonprofits, partnering with government to get food in the hands of organizations and to provide, home health services and whatever it is. So those collaborations are going to be really critical. And I think hopefully that becomes the new normal. It's something that we kind of, slap our wrists and say, we should have been doing this all along. And the fact that the situation forced us into it, maybe we can turn it in. Let's see, like the light.
The light at the end. Right. I think
Totally.
I think it's awesome because I think you're right. I've seen so much collaboration as well. I think it's like you said, we're meeting needs, new community needs that we didn't know we had before. And it's like, these talents that people have and these ideas, and we can collaborate and just create new things. I think it's so great. So Belissa actually just logged on. Hi, Belissa.
Hi, everyone. I am so sorry, but this is an example of pandemic reality when you have to juggle being a mom and a professional at home. Like, I'm not going to say anything else. That's just the reality of life. But of course, I apologize because, I wouldn't have wanted to be late, but I'm here. So I hope I can make this last time that we have together count.
No, absolutely. Thank you for coming. It's okay. Hey, we're all in this together. So just tell me, how are you doing? How's the foundation doing? How are you?
We're doing well. I mean, like I say, as long as we're healthy, that's good. That's always good news. So everybody's, personally, everybody's healthy, which is a good thing. As far as the foundation, we've been very busy. We've been collaborating very closely with the Miami Foundation, specifically with Lindsay, on just rolling out a strategy to make sure that we are supporting the community during this very difficult time. Obviously, not only on behalf of George Perez and his family, but also the related group. We feel strongly that, everybody has to kind of step up during this time and make contributions to make sure that we can weather this storm as a community. So we've been figuring out ways to be able to do that like everybody else.
Right. Awesome. And I'm going to jump now to Fernanda real quick, and then I'll be right back to you, Belissa. So Fernanda, what are some recommendations that you have as far as what nonprofits can do moving forward to work through all this?
Well, the silver lining with any crisis is the ability to innovate and to, force yourself to look at what is working and what is no longer working or what has to change. There's that saying that a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. Yes. So we're definitely, none of us are in a comfort zone right now. Yes. I think I would, like Lindsay said, be very prepared for anything that might be coming, whether it's the reopening, having a plan in place to make sure your staff is safe, looking at what services may, sometimes you can look at services that maybe weren't as effective, that maybe you can no longer, dedicate to, and look at other ways of doing business. I think collaboration is very, very important moving forward. I mean, it's not just the nonprofit sector that's hurting. A lot of small businesses, restaurants, museums. I mean, there's so much that this pandemic has affected. I think that this is important, the most important time to proactively speak with your donors. Don't stop fundraising. Don't be shy about what your needs are and reaching out. I think that the more you tell your story and the more you express what is going on in your reality, because as much as we try to be on top of everything, it's impossible to know everything that is going on in the community. So we're always open to having conversations with our partners and new partners and new grantees to really get a sense of the needs and to be able then to do targeted interventions.
Awesome. And I think it's so great that all of you are so open to talking with grantees and with us, just to be a person to, to discuss these issues with, because I think a lot of times organizations, and we've talked about this before in past funders roundtables, they're afraid of the funders and they feel like you're, up there, but you're real people just like we are. And I think it's just a great example of how, you're there, you understand what's going on, and like we're all working on this together. So thank you.
Our VP of operations, Janice Sharp, she was on a panel with Lindsay a couple weeks ago, and she said that if our partners are afraid to talk to us, we haven't been doing our job. So I think it is our job to, that's why we, from the very beginning, proactively reached out to everyone to make sure that they knew that we weren't turning our backs to them, and that we are here, and that we are willing to, you know, if we have to convert a current grant into a cooperating support, or if we have to loosen restrictions on reporting or eliminate reporting altogether, I think that this is really the time to you know, reach out and listen and be there for one another.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which I think is amazing. It's just a testament to, you know, what you guys do. And I mean, this is what foundations are for, right? This is why we're here. We're all here to work together to build our community. So it's amazing. So Belissa, I'm going to put the questions towards you. How are you doing? What recommendations would you have? I know you have experience on the grant writer side of things from the last foundation, from this roundtable we did. So what advice could you give to nonprofits going through these changes right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say to definitely reach out to your existing funders. So organizations that are already providing you with funding, reach out to them, have conversations. I know that we've been doing that a lot with our nonprofit partners, so that they understand what exactly the organization is going through, how the organization has been able to pivot, and what are some of the challenges, because a lot of funders are looking to support their current partners. And even if perhaps that organization that you may hear about in the news or through the media or just through doing these different, you know, webinars and Zoom calls that are going on, that you know that they're being proactive about supporting the community, reach out to them. This is a great time to do it and to let them know, you know, again, what are the challenges that your organization is going through? How are you preparing as an organization to not only continue your programming or your services or whatever it is that you do during this time, but also in the future, and how can they support for, you know, you, so that you're in a better position to just continue to do the work, basically, because at the end of the day, that's the purpose. The purpose is for you to be able to continue the work that you do, fulfill your mission, despite whatever challenges may come about. And I think we can all say that this is a very unique time for everybody, whether you're a funder, whether you are, you know, a nonprofit that you know, is seeking funds. These are very challenging times all around. So I think to be able to come together and have those conversations. And I think also what I would say too is reach out to your fellow nonprofit organizations to find ways that you can collaborate, that you can help each other. I've been very pleased to see how many organizations are coming together to really help each other out and to say, look, this is where I'm strong right now, and these are my strengths, but these are my challenges. How can we help each other so that we can continue to serve the community in the best way possible? So I've been very, very happy to see that that's happening on an ongoing basis.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, no, I agree. I think the collaboration is just so amazing. And, you know, like you said, like all of you said, you know, it's working together and building each other up and coming up with new ideas and new ways. And I really also like that you mentioned the strategic plans. I think that's great. You know, the organizations need to look at their strategic plans and maybe see how they can embrace technology now, right? Because we're all online now. Maybe there's ways to service people. And I've seen organizations that have kind of taken a switch in the way they're delivering services, that are able to do it online, and now they're able to reach so many more people than they were before. So there are places where there's, you know, improvements happening. So I'm going to now, I guess we could do a poll now. We're about halfway through the presentation. Lucinda, we could do that poll and then open up to questions.
Yeah, so Lorinda and I designed a poll very last minute, and now it says I'm logged in from another device and my polling is inactive. So we had a really great poll prepared.
Quarantine life.
Not letting me. So we all think we're Zoom pros at this point, and then there's always glitches. But
I can try if you want.
That would be great. So we just have a couple questions. If you guys see a poll come up, that's great if you want to respond. And if not, we'll move, I think, into Q&A. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah. Yep. Let's do Q&A. So any questions?
Is it the polling one?
There's a poll with like 3 questions.
Oh, there it is.
That's so funny because I don't even see it.
Well, I just
Oh, probably because
it popped up, right?
Great. So this just gives us a chance to know who's on the call and what some of your primary challenges might be.
So for me, it popped up. It allowed me to identify what county I'm from, and then nothing, like there were no other questions.
Okay, so you know what, that was the first poll, Val, that we designed, and so it might be called serve poll number 2. I don't know exactly.
Okay, so should I end this one?
Yeah, and if you can't make it work, don't stress. It was just a feature we thought we'd try to utilize.
I can do the next one.
Hey, Lindsay,
Yeah.
while Val's doing that, speaking of surveys, is the results of the survey you all conducted, is that public, or were results, some sort of report produced around that?
Yeah, so we
I
haven't
probably
made
missed
them.
it.
We have not made those results truly public because there's actually quite a bit of personal information about
Yeah, I can
organizations
imagine.
that would not be appropriate to share publicly. But what we
Yeah.
are trying to do is share it strategically
aggregate.
with funding partners as well,
Great.
like the details. So we've come to an agreement between Health Foundation, United Way, Children's Trust, the Department of Cultural Affairs, as well as also FIU has a nonprofit survey out right now. We are all agreeing that in any survey that's shared, we'll share the results with the other funders so that we're all kind of working off of the same and most current information, which is really helpful. And that spirit of collaboration is really important right now, both so we can ensure we're leveraging each other's funding and ideas. And so we're not sharing it publicly, but we are asking that folks continue to report back to us the impacts they're feeling, because things are different now than they were 6 or 8 weeks ago. So we're really using that information both to drive kind of the foundation's longer term strategy for helping to rebuild our community with the money that we raise into the Community Recovery Fund. But we're also working closely with our donor advised fund holders who are looking to make quick grants to one organization, 2 organizations at a time, and they'll come to us and say, who's doing XYZ in this space, or who's working in this community. And we're really looking at both kind of what we know from our conversations with nonprofits, as well as kind of recent survey data to say, oh, we know that this organization's doing this and feeding people in this community. They would be great for you to make a grant to. So we're trying to connect our donor advised fund holders to really current pressing needs on the ground. And so we rely on our nonprofit partners to tell us what they're doing and who they're serving and what their needs are, so that we can correctly communicate that to potential funders.
So maybe I'll circle back to you, and if there's any data that's relevant for us as the center, because we would love to, this would be part of our strategic planning process as well, to be able to respond to the community. And I'll connect with you offline if there's anything relevant for us just to be aware of, or how we can kind of pivot as well. That would be really helpful for us. Okay, so it looks like we're administering the poll, and I think what we'll do, the results of the poll is maybe helpful for the presenters and Lorinda to know who all's on the call. And we will move into Q&A for the remaining 25 minutes, which is really great to have a nice amount of time. So I think the 2 options that you have to submit questions is obviously in the chat box. I would just go ahead and submit your question to everyone in chat. You can also use the raise hand feature, and I will do my best to keep up with all of that. But feel free to start posing some questions, and Lorinda and I will field them as best as we can and get to as many as we can.
Yes.
And I will say this while we're waiting for some of the questions to come in. Generally, when you think about who you're going to be reaching out to, as your organization looks at donors, like I would heavily focus your efforts on going back to your existing long-term donors. I'd say in this time, at least the funders I've spoken to in the foundation, we're thinking more about how do we reinvest in the organizations we've been investing in for 5-10 years, who we've been supporting that we now want to make sure that they're still in existence a year from now. And I think many funders are thinking the same way. So I would say generally, this isn't true across the board, but generally I would say go to the organizations who you have those existing relationships and that trust already built up with, especially because you're most likely going to be seeking more general operating support. And when we think about the organizations that we would provide that type of support to, that's going to be the organizations that we've been partnering with for years.
So we have one question that popped up from Francisco. He says, can you contribute your views on virtual fundraising events? He says grants availability has all but dried up for new organizations and all non-COVID-19 programs. It seems that the theme going forward is collaboration, reinvention, redefinition of mission. Please offer options to successfully raise funds virtually during these difficult times.
It's so specific to the type of organization you are. But I mean, I've seen great ideas out there. The arts organizations are finding ways to do virtual performances and then use them as soft fundraisers where they post the performance with a donate button. You know, if you appreciated this or you would have paid to come see this in person, consider donating to us. I've seen Chad with Guitars Over Guns. He shaved his head as a fundraiser. So, you know, if there's something quirky you can do as a leader of your organization, like he raised, I think, over $30,000 doing that. So there are ways you got to get creative.
Wow. And I think it's the online platform, right? I mean, this virtual, you know, embracing the virtual world is becoming such a big thing.
I will just add that although most of the response right now is to COVID and is taking a lot of funders' attentions, you know, this is a situation that is constantly evolving. And the way the Health Foundation has decided to respond is that we repurpose just a portion of our grant making dollars for this year with the option to revisit that again at the end of May. So that's how much it changes. So that's why we limit it to just, you know, a week at a time, because we do have a brand new strategic plan that we're going to be unveiling for the rest of the year that we really believe will speak to the long-term response of COVID. So we're not going to just be focusing on this emergency immediate needs right now. It's going to have to evolve, and we have other grant making dollars that are going to be available down the pipeline. So don't lose hope. I think that if you're a leader of a nonprofit, you're a very resilient person and you're very capable. So don't think that, you know, just because we're in this situation right now, that that's going to be the same a month down the road or 6 months down the road, because there is going to be other funding available.
Awesome. I think that's really great to share, because I've heard that too. A lot of people are very nervous. They're thinking that if it's not a COVID related issue, there's going to be no grants available. And thanks for communicating that there will be just in the future. And I guess the time frame is also difficult to know, because we don't know when this is going to kind of shift and how the reopenings of things are going to happen and all that. So I imagine that that's also part of the guiding, you know, the guiding principles behind all this. So let's see, we have a couple other questions. Is it too soon to do fundraising when your sponsors are going through their own chaos? This came from Lily, who mentioned that they had to cancel one event and reschedule the gala event to October. And they're thinking that may not happen. Their event may not happen. So then the question is it too soon to do fundraising when your sponsors are going through their own chaos? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's never too soon. I think, again, if you're having very transparent, candid conversations with your existing partners that are already funding your organization, I think that they will let you know, right? They'll let you know and say, listen, we are not in a position right now to do additional funding, or we're currently going through our own assessment of how we want to respond to this, or how we are going to be moving forward with grant making in the long run, or, you know, what our long-term strategy is. So I think, again, it doesn't hurt to have the conversation, to kind of, you know, express what it is that's going on in the organization, what the challenges are, and, you know, use that person as a thought partner, because even if they're not able to provide funding, maybe they're able to generate some ideas to help you figure out how to identify other sources of revenue, or, like Lindsay said before, how to creatively reach out to the public, because right now, at least for now, everyone's home, right? So being able to reach out to people and connect with them, whether it's via email, whether it's through the social media platforms that exist, I think is a great time, because even if you can't necessarily raise money in that way, but at least people are knowing who you are and you're staying relevant.
Excellent. So we have a couple of questions that came in, more or less revolving around the same thought. If you're a new organization or have not been previously funded by one of the foundations, what is your opinion on now approaching a foundation in current times for funding?
I'm going to go back to what I said before. I think it's a really hard time to go to a funder as an organization if they've never funded you before. Not that it can't happen, but I would say the only situations right now, and it's hard to look into the future, but right now I'd say the only new organization that we would probably be considering funding for if it was specifically related to COVID relief right now. Because there's been some pop-up organizations and collaborations, we would consider funding those, but if our new after-school education program right now, we've never funded you before, we're most likely, and I'm trying to be transparent here, that is most likely not going to be something that we move forward with at this point.
Awesome, awesome. And I appreciate your transparency and your willingness to talk about that, because I think it's kind of like the elephant in the room in a lot of ways. But it makes sense. Maybe not right now, but there's plenty of other opportunities and different things organizations can do. You know, plan out your strategic plan, like everybody's mentioned, work with other nonprofits that maybe have been around a while and see how you can support together and collaborate together. So, you know, like I want to vocalize, it's not hopeless. It's just right now, you know, things are different, but there's other ways. And again, partnerships and collaboration, I think, has always been key. And I think, you know, more so now. So that's an excellent question. So we have another question here. Does anyone know what specific appropriations as a region that we are asking for on the federal level regarding federal funding?
I wouldn't say at the federal level, but I know that the Health Foundation has been pretty active in communicating with elected officials. We submitted some public comments to the governor's reopening task force. We have reached out to other elected officials around accessible testing options, as well as how to integrate the racial disparities that we're seeing. I saw the other day some data that in Miami-Dade County, Blacks are getting hospitalized due to COVID at 27% versus whites at 17%. So we're making sure that with the reopening plans that there is an acknowledgement and a strategic plan around how to reopen, but addressing these inequities. So I don't know in terms about federal appropriations, but I think the more that we reach out to our elected officials and do it in a concerted way, because in reality, I think, at least this is the Health Foundation's perspective, is that testing and contact tracing is going to be really essential with our reopening, and to make sure that we don't have a second wave coming. And if it does, that we are better prepared.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that.
And we're in a similar position as Health Foundation. We're doing similar things. The best person at our foundation to speak to that is Lauren Parra. So David, I know you're in touch with her already, and she can talk to you more about the specific policies we're trying to push. I know locally she was part of the county task force on, you know, plans for reopening and providing recommendations. And we also, as a foundation, got behind the push to make sure there were walk-up testing sites for those in our community without access to cars and transportation.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we have another question from James Eccles. This says, now that Mayor Jimenez has started to announce potential release dates, I have questions about post-lockdown programs and funding. For example, we had applied for a community grant from a funder, but they pivoted that funding to COVID-19 at the time, which was totally appropriate. The program we applied for is based around public gatherings. Is it still shovel ready? It is still shovel ready. So I'm wondering if the funders can talk to us about how we might revisit the discussion about this program funding.
Yeah, I think that's what I said before. The situation is ever evolving and every day is different. So what we thought was, you know, relevant 2 weeks ago is no longer. So I think I would recommend just have those conversations be ongoing, so that we know also what the needs are as we reopen. I mean, we as funders can do our best to try to plan as well, but I think that without the perspective of those on the ground, we can only do so much. So I would just recommend to have those ongoing conversations, because the needs are going to be evolving every day.
We're in the same situation. It's really hard. We had started our annual community grants process right before this started. We had already reviewed pre-proposals. We were about to request full proposals. And so as we sat at home, you know, in the past month reading the full proposals, things have changed significantly. And that's why, as we're thinking about the grants we're going to award, we're trying to allow for some flexibility. But as grant committees, we have those questions like, well, can this program happen if camp doesn't open? And if, you know, this center isn't open, can this program happen? And we don't have the answers, the same as you don't. So, but we're trying to be flexible and say, all right, well, they have a plan in place so that even if it doesn't happen, here's how they're virtually going to provide it, and this will still provide value. So it's about not only saying like, this is the only way it's going to happen is about being in person, but if you can show a funder like, well, if it doesn't happen, don't worry, your funds will still get utilized to serve the population that they really wanted to serve with those funds. I think showing that you have a plan, even though it can't be fully baked because none of us have, you know, a crystal ball into the future, but just showing that you're at least thinking about contingency plans is really important.
Excellent, excellent. Let me see, we have another question. How would you recommend connecting to corporate funders who are used to receiving certain benefits for sponsoring a program or an event? Have you seen any creative ways nonprofits are engaging in providing virtual benefits?
I mean, I would say that just from, you know, my past work being in development that, you know, I think in the last few years, or at least couple of years, I think exposure on social media platforms, email distribution, that's always been something that's been attractive to sponsors. So I would say it's probably no different than what it's been, in, you know, in the recent past. So I think being able to offer kind of that visibility to sponsors through your platforms, through your email distributions, whoever your audience is, and obviously if you have more creative ways of being able to provide visibility for the sponsor, that's always great. But I think that pretty much has stayed the same.
Awesome, awesome. How do you see small businesses and nonprofits working together? And specifically in this time?
Businesses.
Well, one example is the Health Foundation has an initiative called the South Florida Anchor Alliance, where we're working with anchor institutions like hospitals and universities. And one of the things that we're looking at is how they can contribute to a more inclusive economy. So working with their procurement practices to use, you know, local small businesses instead of going to perhaps like a national or a vendor. So I think that in the times in the near future, I think that's one of the ways that maybe nonprofits and small businesses can work together to come up with solutions to help our local community.
Excellent.
And I think sometimes breaking down the barriers, a lot of nonprofits, especially in our community, are small businesses. So sometimes just ensuring that we're not creating a dividing line between the two. Like when you think about the average size of organizations in our community, they are considered small businesses and should be thought of as such by government as well as, you know, the entities themselves.
Excellent. Yeah, I think now is definitely like we've brought up a few times, it's time to collaborate and work together. And I like what you said, Lindsay, it's like those lines don't need to exist anymore. If we can all work together towards, you know, getting through this situation, you know, the next phase of when we're integrating back into whatever normal may be and moving forward. So yeah, I think it's time to work together.
I'm sure you guys have seen, you know, the healthcare workers and first responders receiving meals from restaurants in the community. Well, I have an example of a local restaurant that did an online fundraiser, and with that money, they were able to convert their restaurant into basically a feeding center for some of the hospitals and delivering meals. So that's another example of, you know, thinking outside of your current situation and how to connect and help others can also in the end help your own business or your own nonprofit.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way too that for-profits can invest more in the nonprofit sector, and like we can all just, you know, collaborate, which again is one of the great things, right? Like the silver lining. It's a negative situation, but it's a positive that's coming out of it. Just that collaboration. Let's see what other questions we have. We have a question.
Miranda, I'm sorry. We have someone who's raised his hand. It's Yasser. If we got that correct. Yasser, is that you? You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Thanks. My name is Yasser. I represent GT's Playhouse. GT's Playhouse is the only free achievement centers for Down syndromes nationwide. We have 49 centers throughout the U.S., one in Mexico. And along with Claribel Celedon, who's on call as well, we represent the board for GT's Playhouse Miami, which is set to open in 2020. So we're kind of in a very specific situation. We're on phase 3 of development, and we have some momentum. We've raised some funds. We were approximately 50% into our raise for the required before we actually go into brick and mortar building. And with all the changes taking place, however, we have not secured any local sponsors, and every chapter is required to secure their own local corporate sponsor. So we haven't really solidified that yet. So we don't have any local source of funding. It's all been fundraising through a golf tournament we did last year. Right now, we're doing a virtual challenge actually on June 6th under www.steptoaccept.org. I think it's a perfect example of the question that was asked earlier, because at a nationwide level, Gigi's Playhouse has adapted very well to the COVID, rolling out virtual programs with very great numbers right now. Nationwide, hundreds and hundreds of families are joining these virtual free programs in lieu of the fact that we had to close all the centers. So my question is, in this position where Miami stands, where we're in phase 3, we're about to now start looking for a location. Do you think the changes that are coming due to the COVID-19, are they impactful enough to where we should really reconsider and maybe postpone the timing of securing a location? That's my first question, and it's kind of general. My second question is, to the 3 funders that are present, what are the odds of an organization like us and where we stand? Where would we be in sense of priority as far as getting some support from you guys? And then if that's the case, how do we contact you guys directly? Or are there new alternatives? I mean, are we now contacting directly, or are you going to send us to the regular doors and application processes? Another question is also general in terms of the last question that was asked about as far as businesses and nonprofits, and I know that there was an answer given. What is being done exactly to bridge these businesses in the local community? Because the conglomerates are heavily in the way. What is being done to make this accessibility? And are we looking at other alternative resources such as influencers that I know a lot of you reach, and how could we use them to leverage? Because I know that funding is the primary conversation here, but there's also a lot of leverage we can do with influencers and how they can, for example, if I was to get a million follower celebrity to put out a public service announcement on this challenge, I'm sure we will raise a lot more money, and it's been going very well. So that's something that I don't think will cost a lot of money, but it's another way to collaborate, and we should also consider and prioritize. Other than that, so those are my questions. And then Lorinda, I just wanted to ask you directly as far as grants, are federal grants still going on, or is everything being channeled through the COVID-19 programs? So is this a good time for nonprofits to be applying for federal grants?
So I'll answer the grants question really quickly because it's a pretty straightforward answer. No, federal grants are not decreasing. That's a very big misconception. They are increasing. There's more opportunities that are becoming available daily. And they're very much focused. The way the federal government works is they very much focus on target areas. So Dade County, for instance, South Florida is a target area because of the number of cases of COVID-19. So there is going to be an increase in the different federal departments for grant funding. I can't tell you exactly what right now, but what I can tell you is that grants.gov is where you would look, and they are literally posting every single day new opportunities. So the idea that there's going to be decreased funding is a big misconception. There's going to be an increase. I just don't know exactly what that is, but that's stuff that we'll publicize and send through emails and things like that to share the information as it comes through. So the rest of the questions I'll leave to the foundations.
Thank you, Yasser, for your questions. I am sure it's not going to be the perfect answer you want to hear, but I'd say generally, again, you're a new organization coming into the community with a great idea. So I would say find out who historically has supported projects and organizations such as yours. What are the other nonprofits working in this space that you might be able to partner with? And then potentially leverage their funding and donors. So it's coming into the community as a partnership as opposed to something new, and figure out, again, who supported those organizations that are doing similar work that might be interested in supporting yours. And as far as the Miami Foundation, we're always open to conversations. We may not always be able to jump on a call the next day, but we have a programs team that is always interested in talking to nonprofit representatives, business leaders, people looking to start up organizations. We want to hear. It's not always going to be able to promise funding, and we may send you to our formal grant process channels. But we're always open to a conversation to learn about what it is you're trying to bring to Miami.
Yeah, I would add, I didn't catch just the first part of your question about the population you serve, but I think you said children with developmental disabilities. So I agree with Lindsay. I would look to see what other organizations are serving the same population. I would look at, what funders also are funding in this space, because it doesn't matter, how great your project is. If you reach out to a funder that doesn't focus on that specific area, the likelihood of you getting funding is going to be really difficult. So I would recommend you do like Lindsay said. I also would welcome the conversation, because the more we know of the people coming into the community, we may be able to help you connect to other funders in the community or other partners that we may know of, even if we're not the ones that are able to fund your specific project.
Agreed. I mean, I don't have anything additional to add, but I would say the same thing. I'm always available to have conversations and, explore synergies and where there may be alignment, but definitely reach out to potential funders, have those conversations, and that should give you a good sense of kind of where you need to channel all your energy.
And I'm sure the Center for Social Change can help with that, because I'm sure they have some kind of list or repository of the different funders in the community, or the different resources, the different grant opportunities that are available. I know Lorinda is an excellent resource when it comes to grants. So I'm sure that they could be also a great resource for you.
We also have I put the link in the chat. We have one of the projects that we worked on is what we call Grants Inc. University. It's an online school. We have a free class that we opened up that's a list of about 500 resources throughout the United States. They're not focused in Florida, but of resources, organizations that have said they are giving some kind of support through COVID-19. So I put the link here so that you can sign on to and download the Excel spreadsheet and some checklists on how to do that. So that's some resources. We're going to try to start putting those up more often, especially when it comes to the federal grants, because I do have a lot of experience with federal grants that I've worked with, mostly organizations out of state, but we're working on building out a free class for that as well, to show you how to navigate grants.gov, how to access those resources, and try to give out as much of that information as possible, because that's one thing that federal grants are much more, I don't want to say they're more difficult, but they're a whole different animal than foundation grants. And I know a lot of organizations are confused on how to do it. So that's something that I've really dedicated some of my time in doing, is kind of simplifying it and giving a nice platform on how to do this. So that'll be something that we have on our website for free that you guys can access. So we're still building that out. But for now, there's a course called COVID-19 Relief that you can at least download that Excel spreadsheet to get you started. So.
Hey, Lorinda, we've had this come up among our community, and someone posted it as well, and maybe one of the funders know, and Lorinda, maybe you made some progress on this, but people have asked, with the libraries being closed, how can nonprofits access the Foundation Center directory, the online, the FDO? And we've kind of gone around on this ourselves internally and haven't found a way, or a couple of people have offered it. Actually, Kirsten is probably on the call, and I think her organization is offering, but I was just curious if any of the foundations know if anyone else is offering free access to the Foundation directory online.
Not that I'm aware of, but I saw in the chat box, I think probably the best thing to do is just call the library directly and ask them.
I'm happy to jump in really quickly. It's Kirsten.
Yes, thank you, Kirsten.
Hi. Good to see you. I know you can't see me, but good to see you. I'm struggling with allergies, so I'm feeling like I need to hide a little this morning. So we are offering, through our partnership with Lynn University, we're offering access to Foundation Directory online indefinitely, and there's no criteria. You can be any nonprofit anywhere in the country. If you can just email me at kstevens@canico.com. I'll put it in the chat in a second. It's just so that we can give them a little list of who's requesting it. But I also just want to mention that for the month of May, we are also offering free access to Grant Watch and Grant Station through our partnership with Foundation for Collective Impact. Again, free and no strings attached. We're not going to sell you anything. It is just because everyone right now really needs to look out for themselves and try and secure some good funding. And we just want to make that available. So again, just email me if you'd like that access. That's no problem whatsoever.
Perfect. I'm so glad you were here. Thank you. That's perfect. And we will,
absolutely.
I need to share that in our newsletter with our members in our community. So we will, I'll get the right language from you on that. So I know we're actually over time. Lorinda, do you want to mention any other upcoming programs you might have or workshops along the same lines? I'll just say real briefly that I put the survey link in chat. We'll send it out over email. We love having your feedback on these types of programs. I'm quite sure everyone will request more of these. So we will definitely probably provide these more frequently, these types of roundtables, and also reach out to other funders so you can hear different voices, and so that we also don't put too much burden on the same people, because they've been so gracious with their time. Lorinda,
So
any other things you want to
thank you so
announce?
much to all three of you. You guys have always been so wonderful and open to communicating with us. I think it's so great. So I'm super grateful. We're planning another Funders Roundtable, similar event in June. It's going to be something that's pre-recorded, and really the goal there is just to get information together on strategic planning, like we mentioned, and things that nonprofits can do as they are going through the development phase of restructuring their organization. So that's something that we hope to do, just so we can have some feedback and some guidance for nonprofits to give them practical things to start working on moving forward, so they can start planning. Then we're also going to still have some more of the, the grant workshops. And then I put here in the link, and I'll send it to everybody also, the Grants Inc. University, where we're going to upload all those resources that people can download. And then we'll just keep the conversation going and sharing resources as much as we can, and, work together. So, and thank you all so much for being here.
I'm going to jump in quickly before everybody signs off and throw out two things. So on Monday evening, the Miami Foundation is hosting a mayoral candidate forum. So check it out. Go to our website and you can register to attend and submit questions that you have for the Miami-Dade County mayoral candidates. All of the candidates are participating. So we'd love to see you there, and make sure that the nonprofit sector is well represented and has their questions in the mix. And then also for anyone doing work out there, 2020 census deadline has been extended. So please ensure that you're continuing to push the message of census participation, because our community, as we look to rebuild and recover from this crisis, is going to need those funds more than ever over the next 10 years.
Thank you for the census push.
All right, we'll look forward to seeing some of you again in the future, and thank you again for taking time today, especially to the panelists, and best wishes to everyone to stay safe and sane. And for those who are members at the center, we hope to see you real soon. James and all of you, hope to see your faces. Yeah, and we'd love to have any of you on the call who aren't members come join us. I have a feeling there will be a pent-up demand for community and connection. So when our doors are open, we'll let you know. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Have a great day,
Take
everybody.
care.
Bye.
care.
Val, I think you'll have to end it.